Xenoblade X has become one of the most highly requested ports or remasters. Nintendo, please, we're all begging you, we're all on our knees, we're all on the rooftop screaming to the heavens, we're all calling our moms, discording our friends, drawing some letters and SOS on the beach, sending out smoke signals, all for the chance of seeing Xenoblade X return, and so all the Xenoblade games can come back together on a unified front on one platform, no longer stranded on the Wii U, but on the Switch or Switch 2. That just sounds like a lovely reality, but I do not believe in that, at least for now. That is that is not the topic of this video. If you read the title, you should not be surprised. Xenoblade X requires a lot more work than I think people expect. It was a struggle to even get it on the Wii U, and it's gonna be another struggle to bring it forward, especially with all the Wii U specific technology and gameplay features. However, that does not mean we have to wait till Xenoblade 4, or even wait to Monolith Soft's new IP. No. Monolith Soft will be returning. A homecoming, if you will, is about to arrive in the form of another definitive edition right under your nose, and mine as well. Xenoblade 2 Definitive Edition has been the plan all along. But before I explain why, I know that many of you came into this video upset. You saw the title, you saw the thumbnail, and you thought to yourselves immediately, how dare you, Nara? How dare you even imply that Xenoblade 2 would get a remaster before Xenoblade X? Xenoblade 2 doesn't even need a remaster. And that is exactly why I want to begin by addressing the most common arguments I've seen against Xenoblade 2 Definitive Edition. Now granted, it's not like it's a hot topic, but it is something that I see every now and then, as well as, just a few times I've mentioned it. There are some common arguments that I want to refute right now. The first argument is very common, perhaps the most common of them all, and that is the fact that apparently a remaster is just so unreasonable because it's quote-unquote too soon. Tell that to my shirt, which has seen the passage of time. Okay, Xenoblade 2 came out 7 years ago. More specifically, Xenoblade 2 is the oldest Xenoblade game on the Switch. I know that's kind of obvious, but it definitely shows in that game. A lot of the common criticisms stems from the fact that, yeah, it is visibly the oldest on the Switch. So if we want to talk about age, then yes, that is a factor. Even if it wasn't 7 years, let's not act as if it's preposterous that there would be a remaster or an enhanced port after only 7 years. Hell, we've seen it in less, because now we have 2 major JRPGs. Probably the biggest JRPGs sales-wise. We have Persona 5 Royal. Yeah, all you Persona fans, you bought it. You bought it like 2 or 3 years after the original. You ain't gonna be complaining. Dragon Quest XI-S. That was originally an excuse to have its own Switch version, add some stuff there, but then it came to other consoles. So yeah, it's basically just a definitive edition like we would expect from a Xenoblade 1 and a Xenoblade 2. But it's not just JRPGs, it's other major titles. Let's talk about PlayStation for a second. Let's talk about Ghost of Tsushima Definitive Edition. How about Horizon Zero Dawn Remaster? Can't even say it without laughing. How about Last of Us Part 1? Even though that game was already remastered, they did it again. Now I know what you're saying, because I'm ready to defend against arguments number 2. The more reasonable argument in my opinion, and that's the fact that most likely the Switch 2 will be backwards compatible. So why would Nintendo do that, Nara? Yeah, all these other companies, they'll remaster PS4 games to PS5, even though you could already inherently upgrade those games to PS5, but that's not Nintendo. That's not the Nintendo way. Nintendo wouldn't do that. Well, first of all, it's Nintendo. Let's not act like we know. Let's not act like we know what they're gonna do. But also, the only Nintendo home consoles that were backwards compatible were the Wii and the Wii U. Okay, so yeah, no shit. Most of the remasters that Nintendo has ever made were on consoles that couldn't play the original. That's just, yeah, you got me. And even so, there were a few examples if you look at the handheld systems. You had Mario and Luigi, Bowser's Inside Story getting a remaster on the 3DS, even though you could already play the DS version right on the 3DS. And of course I have to mention, the obvious examples being all those Pokemon third versions. I mean, I'm not saying Monolith Soft or even most of Nintendo is like Pokemon Company, but it's there. It happens. A lot. But like I said, it is Nintendo. Like, I think that's a reasonable argument, but considering it is Nintendo, that means it isn't an argument. and my argument against that is also not. So, we're just talking in circles here. Oh my god, let's talk about argument number 3. This is my least favorite argument. This is like bottom tier argument, and I just cannot wait. I cannot wait to talk about this. There's a good chance, a great chance I would say, that they're gonna say, yeah, I mean, that would be nice, but, you know, it's too soon. It's probably gonna happen on the 10th anniversary. Just like Xenoblade 1. Let's have a stern discussion, you and I. Let me teach you something about life real quick. Most companies, especially Nintendo, they do not care about video game anniversaries. They especially do not care like the fans do. There's plenty of examples where there have been celebrations for anniversaries, like Mario. Mario had a whole direct for his 35th anniversary, and when it happened, we all thought it was random, but they had it, and there was a bunch of announcements. They even had a specific game called Mario 35, and I love that game, and they took it away from me. The thing is that most celebrations for anniversaries, they are a coincidence. They are a happy accident. They're trying to use Xenoblade 1 as a start of a pattern, like it's some sort of trendsetter, when in reality, it is the exact proof of what I'm talking about. Do you really think they remastered Xenoblade 1 because of its 10th anniversary? No! Of course not! Let's talk about what else was happening in the world. Let's talk about how 2 years before that happened, in 2020, 2 years before that, was Xenoblade 2, the game which introduced a whole new audience to Xenoblade. And then, 2 years after 2020, was Xenoblade 3, a game which, right when it was revealed, they told you to your face it is connected to Xenoblade 1 and 2. And, in 2020, there was Future Connected, which foreshadowed Xenoblade 3. All that being said, I just gave you a very basic premise, a basic description of what happens. It did not matter if that was the 8th year, or the 9th year, or the 13th year. As long as it was between 2 and 3, that was when Xenoblade 1 Definitive Edition was going to happen. The fact that it was the 10th anniversary was a happy accident, and that's awesome. But it's not an argument. And hey, you know what? Maybe there is some interview out there that contradicts me. Maybe Tetsuya Takahashi explicitly said Nara is an idiot. Maybe he said that, I don't know. I'm not an encyclopedia of Xenoblade knowledge. That might have happened. Just as fans of this franchise, or any franchise, you just want to attach those sentimental feelings, the values to anniversaries. And again, when it happens, it's great. But it is not something you should base your entire logic on. It's just, no. No! But hey, to be fair, all I've been doing so far is talking trash. How about I take a swing? How about I provide my reasons, my arguments, as to why Xenoblade 2 Definitive Edition will happen sooner than you think? Are they so much better than everything that I just shut down? You're damn right they're better! Reason number 1, what do corporations love the most? Money! I've mentioned this in plenty other videos, but Xenoblade 2 is the highest selling Xenoblade, and it wasn't a fad. It wasn't just this moment. No, it hasn't dropped off. We haven't seen updated sales figures for the franchise in a while, unfortunately, but last we saw, Xenoblade 2 was still selling comparable numbers to 1 and 3. Even though it is the oldest on the Switch, it's still right up there. I've never seen as much love for Xenoblade 2 as I have recently, like this year. So it's not like the popularity just dropped off. Even if you want to ignore the sales, there's still so much representation online. I mean, we talk about how 7 years is apparently too soon, but that's how long it took for Link to pull out the Master Sword, you know what I'm saying? So, I'm sure many Xenoblade 2 fans, they played it when they were a teenager, they absolutely loved it. Skip ahead 7 years, they are now a grown adult with the power to represent that love online, and the bare minimum financial stability to purchase Xenoblade 2 Definitive Edition. Even if you're not the biggest fan of 2, I just feel like it'd be hard for you to ignore that prospect. The prospect of a better version of Xenoblade 2, probably fixing a lot of your criticisms, alongside the same package, all of its DLC. A JRPG fan in general would look at that, and it's just hard to ignore that value proposition, you know? Like, that would probably be the most enticing package to enter Xenoblade for the first time. And look, I'm not trying to say that it would easily outsell the original game. I'm just saying that it would sell more than enough to justify its existence. I mean, we haven't even talked about the most important factor, and that is the power of anime and waifus. Pyra and Mythra got so much clout because of Smash Brothers. I remember after that reveal, Xenoblade 2 physical copies were selling out. And I'm not saying the exact sensation would be replicated. You would at least get some of that, because some people, they need a game to be new to jump in. Even if it isn't exactly new, just like a re-release, or port, or remaster. Just an excuse to say, hey, this is relevant right now, so let me jump in. So, like, an example is the Trails remake next year. I'm sure there's many people, including myself, where we tell ourselves, oh yeah, we'd love to get into Trails. Yeah, one day, but it's in our backlog forever. We could have played that first game. We could have done it, but we didn't. But now that there's a new release, a new excuse, that's gonna help so many people. And I think the same thing for Xenoblade 2 Definitive Edition. They're still gonna remember Pyra and Mythra in Smash, especially if they do Smash Ultimate Deluxe, or if they're in the next Smash game. Whatever the case, they're still relevant characters, so if they have their game remastered, there we go. Reason number 2 is a much shorter spiel, I promise. Xenoblade 2 is arguably the most important Xenoblade game in terms of the lore. Like, if you want to understand why that trilogy is a trilogy, Xenoblade 2 is where you find that out. Xenoblade 2 is where you get the bulk of that information, and it tells you the potential. It tells you the rewards of playing every Xenoblade game, is if you play Xenoblade 2. All these new Switch 2 owners, they don't have to feel like they're playing this 7-year-old game. If they even use 2 Definitive Edition as their entry point, just like many people did for the original Switch, then yeah, you're gonna get this great game, great package, great value, and all this juicy lore that's gonna motivate you to play the other games of the trilogy. We finally made it to reason number 3, and I say finally because this is the main reason why I am making this video at all. It's too harsh of a term, but we'll just call them plot holes. The plot holes leaving Xenoblade 3 and future redeems, and this is why this segment's, basically the rest of this video, is gonna have spoilers. So if you haven't played all the Xenoblade games, well, I'd say specifically 2 and 3, but just to be safe, if you haven't played the whole trilogy, then you probably shouldn't watch this part. There are certain questions regarding the lore that have yet to be answered, and many of us are assuming it's gonna be answered in Xenoblade 4. Now, I'm not saying it's a bad assumption, but if Xenoblade 2 Definitive Edition were to exist, it would be the perfect opportunity to add in an epilogue that answers most of those questions. Because if you think about it, most of those questions just happen to involve Xenoblade 2. And that to me is like a little too much of a coincidence. Now I have to admit, I am not saying an epilogue is likely. If 2 were to be remastered, I am not saying this is an expectation. I think that would be silly considering 2 already got an expansion. I'm just saying that a lot of those questions could easily be answered if they just did an epilogue. You know, if they're remastering it, you know, you might as well. I'm just saying, because I think about Xenoblade 4. It's a whole new storyline. We're done with the Claw Saga. you're probably going to want to make it beginner friendly as possible. And I just think it'd be weird. It's going to serve that purpose, but also have these loose ends that were never tied from Xenoblade 3. It's like, if we're actually going to end the Cloth Saga, let's end it. Head forward, not looking back, no elephants in the room, we're just going. But in case you're struggling to recall the plot holes I'm talking about, allow me to run it down, okay? First of all, we never see what a post-Xenoblade 2 world looks like. Xenoblade 1, we see it in Future Connected, and then we see it at the very beginning of Xenoblade 3. You never see it for Xenoblade 2, and to me, I just think that's weird. It's just kind of a weird omission. And that leads me to the 3 ghosts of Xenoblade Past. Number 1 being Nia. Why and how did Nia become queen? That was never even attempted to be alluded to. There is no reason, from what we know, from the information that has been provided to us, there's really no reason why Nia is queen, aside from fan service. Ghost number 2, perhaps the most famous of these plot holes, as we're calling them. Who the hell is Mythra's child, and what happened to them? Now, I'm speculating that they're going to be the main character of Xenoblade 4, and that'd be awesome. But even if that were the case, that would not downright reject their appearance in a potential epilogue. Like, let's just fantasize for a little bit. I'm not saying this is likely, I'm not saying this is a great idea. But like, what if in the epilogue, at the very end, that's when the children are born, and you finally see Mythra's child, maybe even their name. If we're lucky enough, maybe even their name. But that still leaves some intrigue. It's not like, oh, we finally saw them, because we haven't seen them as a teenager or adult yet. Unlike Mio and Glimmer, there's still something there. It's kind of like a good sequel bait, I guess. Kind of like how Future Connected foreshadowed Xenoblade 3. That would be the moment where, hey, yeah, we finally saw them, but still, that makes me more interested for Xenoblade 4. But ghost number 3 is the most crucial ingredient, because we learned about this with Future Redeemed. And then, the art book, Ionios Moments, I think it's called, from an interview with Tetsuya Takahashi, executive producer of the Xenoblade franchise. He basically said that despite Malos's core crystal being broken at the end of Xenoblade 2, it is indeed still intact. Now, why is that? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I can't tell you that yet. Now, maybe he was lying. Maybe he just didn't... maybe that was an actual plot hole he didn't think of. I don't know. But at the very least, I think we should assume that Xenoblade 4 will feature Malos, or at least that core crystal, in some way or form. But I think an epilogue would be a better opportunity, because you see the resemblance between the latter 2 ghosts of Xenoblade Past, Mythra's child, Malos. They both involve Aegises. Future Connected was an epilogue that gave you closure for Melia, and I think the same can be achieved with Malos, while still making you look forward to the future with Mythra's child. I mean, Future Redeemed also gave you closure with Ontos, aka Alvis, aka Alpha, aka A. Okay? I just feel like there's something there. There's just something more with Malos. There just has to be, even outside of that quote from that interview. And who knows, maybe the answer is uninteresting. Like, maybe the answer is exactly how Shulk found Ontos. Like, he just found it on a beach. Future Redeemed, going back to that, how Niall was the one who found Ontos, and that had this whole chain of events. Maybe it's Mythra's kid who awakens Malos. Maybe that's why they're connected. Maybe that's why they're just these 2 huge plot holes. It's just something like that. Just that connection. All those ghosts of Xenoblade Past. I see the stars aligning. I'm looking outside right now. Past midnight. The night sky. I see no stars, but I know they're there. Just like I know Xenoblade 2 Definitive Edition is coming your way within the next 2 years. But allow me to end this by telling you why you should be excited for Xenoblade 2 Definitive Edition. If it's not for the value proposition, if it's not for the potential epilogue, here is why. It's very simple. The best part is the fact that the changes that would most help the gameplay are all realistic. Why is that? Because most of them have already been introduced to the franchise. Xenoblade 2 came out first, and so all these improvements, that one definitive edition, and then Xenoblade 3, all of that stems from Xenoblade 2 and its lack of quality of life. Okay, so if they could introduce it along the way, then yeah, they can sure as hell put it back into Xenoblade 2 in a remaster. We're talking things like improved navigation, improved tutorials, quality of life in the side questing, saving your party builds like in Xenoblade 3. Think about how these 4 things alone would really help Xenoblade 2, and those are things that you should just expect, because that's just part of Xenoblade now. And as for the more divisive elements, like the gacha and field skills, I don't think there's going to be major changes. I think that's unrealistic, but I do think it's realistic to expect some sort of noticeable change. Like I always complain, I always complain about how the actual bad part of field skills is that you have to equip all the blades by yourself. Like the game doesn't automatically track if you can clear that field skill. But now, we're living in the year 2024 and onward, okay? Xenoblade 3, you can auto-build all your party members just like that. It's so easy. It's so fast. So I would expect something like that would also help a lot in Xenoblade 2 Definitive Edition. Now, there are a few things that, if you hate them, I don't think you're gonna get a better time. Like, the character designs, there might be a few minor adjustments, but I don't expect, like, a big change there. And most importantly, the English dub. Because they could redub, but that's just, like, a lot of effort and a lot of time that I'm sure they're not gonna be willing to spend. Maybe redub, like, certain lines or have additional dialogue or something like that. But, I don't know, I'm thinking about, like, Tales of Vesperia Definitive Edition, where they had certain, I don't know if it was new lines or a redub, but there were just certain lines for the main character where you could just tell that's a different voice actor. And it's kind of jarring. And even if it was the same voice actor, it can still be jarring, because I play Apex Legends. They're always adding in new lines like every season or mid-season. And there's this character who I play a lot named Wraith, and whenever there's a new dialogue line, I can tell. It's different enough that I notice it, and it throws me off a little bit. Like, it kind of... I wouldn't want that in a very story-heavy game like Xenoblade, so I'm kind of of two minds about that. Now, to throw realism out the window, my personal most wanted feature, like a whole new feature, would be more cosmetics. Because if you think about it, despite being the waifu game, despite having all those crazy character designs, Xenoblade 2 is the only Xenoblade that doesn't let you freely change your outfits. Xenoblade 1 and X, you had all that equipment. Xenoblade 3 had all those classes. Xenoblade 2, you can't do that. All you got is all those DLC outfits, but then you have to unlock them through the Coliseum challenge mode, whatever it's called, and that's just a pain in the butt. So I would hope, I would really hope that they would have some more additional outfits that, you know, just the average player has access to. An idea I had was, again, unrealistic. Too much work. If every major city introduced a new outfit for all the main party members, like you go to Torregoth, for example, there's an NPC, you buy an outfit from them, clothes that represent Torregoth culture. Or then you go to Moradane and you get the Ardanian soldier outfits. Like that, that's the one I want the most, okay? Like, things like that. A nice thing for people who maybe didn't like the default outfits, or for people like me returning to the game who just want to change things up. The truth is, it do be Nintendo though. Like, Nintendo kind of be doing their own thing. We don't really know. It's just up in the air. So there's really no point in making this video. But if there's one thing I know about Nintendo, is that it is commonly misunderstood that Nintendo's name translates to leave luck to heaven. And we're gonna need a lot of luck. We're gonna need a lot of luck to predict anything they do, whether it's a 2 remaster, whether it's an X remaster, whatever it is. Count your blessings. But I think in this case, luck is on our side. Because if we're leaving luck to the heavens, I think I think we won't have trouble finding their holy grail. Because Heaven's Holy Grail, if you didn't know, is the original name for Aegis. That's my final argument, Your Honor. I rest my case.